y'all. I am back with another sponsored reading. This reading is about Faith Hedgepeth. Now, some of you might be familiar with this story, but for those who are not, let me just start off by reading some information about her. The body of Faith Hedgepeth, born September 26, 1992, an undergraduate student in her third year at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, was found in her apartment by a friend on the morning of September 7, 2012. She had been beaten over the head with a blunt instrument, later found to be an empty liquor bottle, and evidence of semen and male DNA was present at the crime scene. The last time she was known for certain to be alive was much earlier that morning when she went to bed after returning from a local nightclub with her roommate. Police have recovered considerable forensic evidence in the case, but so far it has served to eliminate one likely suspect, a former boyfriend of her roommate who reportedly expressed anger and resentment towards Hedgepeth, even supposedly threatening to kill her if he could not reunite with her roommate. His DNA, however, did not match that left at the scene. A note left at the scene suggesting the writer was jealous is also believed to have been written by the killer. It was among a large group of documents released by police 2 years after the crime, following a court action brought by several local media outlets. 4 years after the killing, a Virginia DNA testing company prepared and released at police behest an image showing what the suspect might look like based on his genetic phenotype. A voicemail possibly accidentally recorded by Hedgepeth may also capture some of the events that led to her death. In September 2021, the Chapel Hill Police Department announced an arrest in the case. The suspect, not initially considered, had been linked to the case through DNA evidence after a drunken driving arrest the month before. So here's some information about her background. A member of the Hollywood Native American tribe recognized by the state of North Carolina, Faith Hedgepeth was born in 1992 in Warren County, part of the tribe's traditional territory. Her parents divorced within a year of her birth, and she was raised by her mother with the help of an older sister in Hollister and Warrington. Connie Hedgepeth named her second daughter Faith because she believed that what she needed to raise a fourth child when she already had 2 sons, a daughter, and a husband with a drug problem. In high school, Hedgepeth was an honor student, a cheerleader, and a member of many extracurricular clubs and organizations. She did well enough academically to earn a Gates Millennial Scholarship to attend the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Her father had attended UNCCH as well, but he had dropped out. She hoped to be the first in her family to graduate from college. After undergraduate studies, she was considering further studies to become either a pediatrician or teacher. Her first 2 years at the university went well for her, although she took the spring 2012 semester off. She remained in the Chapel Hill area over the summer, living in an off-campus apartment at the Hawthorne at the View complex between Chapel Hill and Durham, on the line between Durham and Orange counties during the month of August. She planned to move to another apartment after her financial aid for the fall semester was made available to her. She shared the apartment with Karina Rosario, with whom she had been friends since freshman year, and Rosario's boyfriend, Eric Tacoy Jones. The relationship between Jones and Rosario had been marked by domestic violence, and eventually she ended it and he moved out. However, he had in early July 2012 twice attempted to break into the apartment, even after Rosario changed the locks. Hedgepeth eventually drove Rosario to court to get a protective order that required Jones to stay away from the apartment. Jones reportedly resented Hedgepeth's influence over his former girlfriend, and at one point reportedly threatened during a phone conversation with Hedgepeth to kill her if he could not get back together with Rosario. Homicide. The evening of September 6, 2012, a Thursday, began at 5:45 p.m. with Hedgepeth attending a rush event for the campus chapter of Alpha Pi Omega, a historically Native American sorority she hoped to join. At 7:15, she left, saying she had to work on a paper she was writing about the history of her tribe. She and Rosario went to the university's Davis Library to study together at 8 p.m. Between 8:30 and 9, she exchanged texts with her father about her hopes to join the sorority. Hedgepeth left Rosario there briefly and returned around 11:30, after which they returned to their apartment together, arriving there around midnight. A half hour later, they left again, heading for the Thrill, a now closed nightclub in downtown Chapel Hill, which admitted customers under the legal drinking age of 21 to dance. The two young women arrived at the Thrill around 12:40 a.m. After almost an hour and a half of dancing, Rosario told police that she was having an upset stomach and she wanted to leave. Security cameras at the club show her and Hedgepeth leaving at 2:06 a.m. It is the last visual record of her presence anywhere before the killing. By 3 a.m., Hedgepeth and Rosario had returned to their apartment. A woman who lived below the two and was awake watching television said she heard 3 thumping noises, which she described as similar to a heavy bag being dropped or furniture being overturned shortly afterward. Hedgepeth's Facebook page was also accessed around the same time. At 3:40 a.m., a text was sent from Hedgepeth's phone to that of Brandon Edwards, a former boyfriend of Rosario, saying, "Hey, B, can you come over here, please? Rosario needs you more. Aha. Please let her know you care." 3 minutes later, another text was sent from Hedgepeth's phone to Edwards with the single word "then," believed to be a correction for the aha in the previous text. That was the last evidence of activity from her phone. At 4:16 a.m., Edwards sent a return text asking who had sent the previous text. Rosario's phone records show she was also trying to call Edwards around the same time. He did not answer, and when he did not, she tried to call Jordan McCrary, a UNCCH soccer player she knew. At 4:25 a.m., she left the apartment to get into McCrary's car. At the time, Rosario said later she believed Hedgepeth was asleep in her room and left the apartment's door unlocked. McCrary drove Rosario to the home of another acquaintance on West Longview Street in Chapel Hill. She put the time of her arrival there at around 4:30 a.m. After spending the rest of the night and the early morning there, a short time after 10:30, she began trying to arrange a ride home. After attempting to reach Hedgepeth, who did not answer, Rosario instead called another friend, Marisol Rangel, who came and took her back to her apartment. When they arrived there shortly before 11 a.m., they entered and called for Hedgepeth, who did not respond. In her bedroom, they found her bloody body wrapped in a quilt, partially nude. They immediately dialed 911 and informed the police. Okay, I'm going to read some more about this story, but first, let's talk about who sponsored this video. So this video has been sponsored by Marcus. Thank you very much for sponsoring this video. And Faith was Marcus's cousin. So that's why he has a vested interest in finding out who murdered Faith. So Marcus wants to know, so you said, I would like to request a case study for my late cousin, Faith Hedgepeth. Ever since this whole Shaquella Robinson case blew up, it kind of reminded me of Faith's death, unfortunately. She was killed back in 2012 at only 19 years of age. They just found the guy last year, Miguel Enrique Salguero Olivares, and arrested him for the beating and possible rape of Faith. No rush, because I know you have tons of case studies and etc. to work on, so I'm willing to wait. To tell you the truth, at this point, I don't know if she knew the guy or not. I've been reading more into this case, and there have been sayings that he's the scapegoat and that her roommates killed her after all. Or if he did do it, he was probably accompanied with someone else, not the roommates, to commit the murder. There's been tons of documentaries and coverage on this case. So I've been refreshing my memory and learning more info on this case ever since the Shanquella case came about. Thank you for taking on this case. You're the only astrologer I know that provides top-tier service on everything you put out. If you need me to, I can email you some articles and videos of this case. Well, again, thank you, Marcus, for sponsoring this video. And this story is crazy because I feel like the investigation was seriously botched. And I'm very skeptical of this Miguel being nabbed as the murderer. I'm not believing it. And I believe the case could have been easily solved, but there was some things going on that resulted in the investigation being botched. So I'm going to be getting into my theory as to who committed this murder, as well as providing my astrological input. So first, let's get into her numerology. So Faith was born on the 26th. That birth number 26 breaks down to 8, and that can produce heavy karma, basically. And 26 is a number of partnerships. And with partnerships, these are the type of partnerships that come with the remittance of karmic debt, or that require the remittance of karmic debt. So partnerships could be part of one's downfall when they are a 26. So beware of who you partner up with when you're born on the 26th. Other people could be your downfall. Her life path number 11 breaks down to 2. Internal and external conflicts, conflicts involving home, conflicts involving women, interference from third parties, love triangles. More about that in a minute. This deals with my theory. So as you can see, Faith has a Libra stellium, her sun, moon, and Mercury in Libra. She has Venus in Scorpio, Pluto in Scorpio, her north node in Sagittarius, south node in Gemini, Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn, which makes her a Neptunian, Saturn in Aquarius, Mars in Cancer, Chiron in Leo, Jupiter in Virgo. All right, so let's get started. So her sun, moon, and Mercury in Libra. This reinforces the partnership theme of the 26, because Libra rules partnerships. It also pertains to open enemies and rivals, which Libra also rules. Cohabitation. Intervening. So Libra is the sign of intervention. So naturally, if she sees her friend in trouble, as a Libra, she's going to want to try to intervene. Also, Libra is the peacemaker, so this deals with her being a peacemaker, or at least trying to be. And also, this is representing the neighbor's account of hearing the loud thump, with Mercury being involved in the mix. So that sun-moon conjunction in particular is representative of a male and female acting in unison, and where a male and female could have been her enemies. So they're working as one, operating in unison. Sun, Moon, and Mercury in Libra square Mars in Cancer, attempting to intervene between Karina and Eric due to domestic violence, being beaten, attacked by more than one person, because we're talking about the Sun and Moon. So that could be being beaten and attacked by a man and a woman. And here is Karina and Faith. So Karina's on the right, Faith is on the left. Moon and Mercury in Libra trine Saturn in Aquarius. This deals with Faith having an active social life. She belonged to a number of clubs and organizations, also where her friend doubled as a roommate, with the moon being involved, taking Karina to the courthouse to file a restraining order against Eric. Mercury in Libra square Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn. Faith's attempts at being a friend's savior results in disagreements. Faith's blind devotion to her friend results in poor judgment. Karina's victimization took away from Faith's peace of mind to the point where she felt forced to intervene. And the note that created confusion. So the note that was left at the scene of the crime, but also this is dealing with the voicemail that was all muffled, and people are saying that she could have butt dialed someone, and but there was a voicemail analyst, and he was saying that it basically proves that her roommates did it. Her roommate and Eric, and maybe even another person, another guy. So the muffled voicemail, the confusion surrounding the text messages as well. So here's that note. So it looks like it was written by a woman, number one. And I believe that any writer analyst, or what would you call that, handwriting analyst, would be able to see that this was written by a female. And then even like the way it's written out, like, I'm not stupid, bitch. Like that sounds like some chick that's trying to get revenge, or that's getting revenge. And then she put jealous. And this doesn't seem like somebody that's too bright either. And of course, it looks like they wrote it in anger. So Faith's Venus was at the first degree of Scorpio, and that first degree pertains to men, attention, and competition. So Venus and Scorpio can bring a jealous woman into your life. Like people that have Venus and Scorpio, they can, attest to the fact that, that Venus can attract haters and people who are jealous of you. A vengeful woman, a murderous woman. Venus and Scorpio trine Mars and Cancer. So this deals with her living with a woman, sharing the cost of living with a woman, in this case, Karina. And this made it easy for her to attract men. I mean, Faith was very pretty, so that trine makes sense. And a woman gets help from a man or men with murdering Faith. So this could be totally ascribed to some woman in her life. And this woman where she actually gave access to a man, access to the home. Because remember, in the story, she said that she left that door unlocked. Why would she do that? Who knows? Unless she knew what was going to happen. Mars in Cancer opposition Uranus in Capricorn. Unstable living situation. So she was staying temporarily with Karina, but she was planning on moving to her own place once she got her financial aid. A friend turns on her, being at odds or at war with a friend. A friend is involved in domestic violence situations. Police are called to the home, being ganged up on, being outnumbered. Jupiter in Virgo squaring her south node in Gemini, north node in Sagittarius. So this T-square makes me think of that saying, no good deed goes unpunished. So with Jupiter in Virgo, Faith was just very helpful. And she was the type that, wanted to make sure people were all right and all this stuff and trying to do the right thing. But sometimes you might do some good deeds and then end up blowing up in your face. So this T-square is pointing to that basically. But it also deals with the judge sealing the file in order to prevent the truth from coming out. It deals with the botched case and where details were either switched or mixed up, in my opinion. Also, this points to the analysis of the voicemail. An inept police force or their hands were tied by a judge. Duplicity through someone who has connections to the legal system, perhaps. And this is also dealing with the college theme with the North Node of Sagittarius and her living off campus in the neighborhood with the Gemini South Node. Not being discriminating led to her undoing. So with people that have a Gemini South Node, Sagittarius North Node, I always tell them, look, you can't mix with the common people, or try not to mix too much with the common people in this lifetime. Because with that Sagittarius North Node, you're supposed to rise above the pettiness and you're supposed to take the road less traveled. So by her being friends with this Karina, and Karina having these domestic violence situations with Eric, that was on some like low class level stuff. So ideally, Faith should have rose above that and got the hell up out of there, or she should have never even been mixing with that type of company to begin with. But, sometimes we got hard lessons to learn, especially when we're young. Jupiter in Virgo, sesqui square Saturn in Aquarius. This is representing her attempts to help out a friend to no avail. Being overly concerned about a friend. Or it could be where she was trying to help out a friend, but then the friend turns on her. So one of Faith's friends, in this case, Karina, is being overlooked by the police, and this could be on purpose. Friend Karina leading police away from the truth, perhaps. Now, Karina looks really kind of sinister right here. She just got that, it's like a dark aura around her. She looked crazy right there, too. Sun in Libra, semi-square Chiron and Leo, getting caught up in someone else's drama. Receiving negative attention from a man who is in a relationship. So that Sun in Libra is basically dealing with a man who's already in a relationship, and the semi-square Chiron in Leo, that's the unwanted attention. Unwanted competition. Chiron and Leo square Pluto and Scorpio. Receiving unwanted attention again, Authorities or someone of importance blocks the investigation. A broken heart triggers the revenge and murder that comes with Pluto in Scorpio. Chiron quincunx Neptune. This makes me think that this aspect could be representative of Miguel Enrique's arrest being a ruse, being false, being deception, an illusion. Chiron and Leo trine North Node in Sagittarius. After Faith was murdered, they did come up with a scholarship. Her tribe came up with a scholarship in her name. So here's some of the timelines of the events that took place with the investigation. So here are some of her asteroids. Jupiter conjunct Apollo. Remember, Jupiter's in Virgo. Faith kept trying to help her friend Karina to no avail, because Apollo can deal with where you keep on making the same mistake over and over again. Uranus conjunct Arachne, getting caught up in a web of lies, deception, and abuse with a friend. Neptune conjunct Arizona, and this is conjoined to my moon, so this is where I come in because I live in Arizona. So this is representing this video with Neptune ruling videos in terms of it being requested by one of my clients who is a family member of hers. Chiron parallel nemesis represents the traits / characteristics of suspect with that whole DNA thing. And I think they were just pulling shit out of their ass at that point, the police department. Venus conjunct Terpsichore, Faith's love for dancing, and it's making me think that, you know, she was trained in a Native American dance and all that. Mercury conjunct Volcano, and that could deal with her being a cheerleader as well. Neighbors' accounts of hearing a loud noise, thump, live, overturned furniture. I don't know why I put live there. Pluto contra-parallel Sedna. So this could deal with issues with isolating or separating the DNA samples, because we're talking about Pluto and Scorpio, and that's DNA. And Sedna is an asteroid that deals with isolation and separating. So I'm looking at this as issues with isolating or separating DNA samples for evidence. Could have been DNA from more than one guy, with Pluto at the 21st degree of Scorpio, Sedna at 12 degrees. And that could also deal with excess. So we know that Eric used to live at that apartment. So of course, Eric's DNA is going to be all over that apartment, including some of his semen, because he was the boyfriend of Karina. Now, from what I'm hearing is that Karina, Faith was found dead on Karina's bed. So of course there would be DNA from Eric on that bed, but it could have been from other men as well. Could have been men that Karina was seeing, could have been men that Faith was seeing. But the police claim that they tested like hundreds of suspects, and they couldn't find a match until years later. Mercury parallel yet posterior. This is a fixed star that is called the man of death. It pertains to evil influences, unseen dangers, poisoning. Mercury conjunct Algorab. That's a star that can manifest as destructiveness, malevolence, lying, fiendishness. Mars parallel Hamal. Hamal deals with violence, cruelty, and brutality. And with Mars connected, that's pointing to is coming from a man. Mars conjunct Merzam. Dangerous passions. Again, that's pertaining to a man that she knows. Mars parallel Adhafera. Crime, lying, stealing, suicide. Jupiter parallel Marfiq. Blindly good-hearted to a fault, easily seduced. Neptune conjoined to Vega, double dealing. Pluto conjunct Unocal High. This can manifest as forgery, writing, insanity. That forgery is making me think of that note. Insanity, problems in love, and loss. South Node parallel Hamal. Again, violence, cruelty, brutality. All right, before I go on with her transits, let me just read a little bit about the investigation. So it says details of the investigation were not discussed publicly at first, a deviation from the Chapel Hill Police's usual practice. The town obtained a court order sealing all records as they were collected. Police collected semen from the scene and it used to develop a DNA profile. It reportedly was consistent with male DNA found elsewhere in the apartment. The autopsy determined that Hedgepeth had died from blunt force trauma to the head, likely a result of being hit by an empty rum bottle in the apartment. Jones seemed to be a very strong suspect. Remember, Eric Jones is the boyfriend of Karina. So Jones seemed to be a very strong suspect from the beginning. Police learned of his history of domestic violence and his threat against Hedgepeth. They also found that the night before, around 6 p.m., he had texts an acquaintance asking for forgiveness for what I am about to do. If that's not a smoking gun statement, I don't know what is. And then posted the same message on his Twitter feed. 3 days later, he changed the banner on his Facebook page to read, "Dear Lord, forgive me for all of my sins and the sins I may commit today. Protect me from the girls who don't deserve me and the ones who wish me dead today." Police saw a DNA sample from Jones, whom they considered a person of interest. After some initial resistance, he complied. His DNA did not match the sample from the apartment, and they excluded him as a suspect. DNA from Edwards and many other men whom police found had been at the Thrill during the same time as Rosario and Hedgepeth was also tested with the same result. Within days, the university's board of trustees, the local Crime Stoppers chapter, the Hollywood Saponi tribe, and the apartment complex had offered a combined $29,000 in reward money for information leading to an arrest. Police hoped the reward money would lead to a quick resolution of the case as their resources were limited. In the 2008 murder of Eve Carson, who at the time was UNCCH's undergraduate student body president, a $25,000 reward had led to the killer's arrest. 2 months later, the office of Governor Bev Perdue added another $10,000 to the reward for Hedgepeth's killer. Seal on case records. In November, the Daily Tar Heel, UNCCH's student newspaper, petitioned the judge who had ordered the investigation records sealed to release an early search warrant in the case. Instead, the judge ordered it resealed for another 45 days. At that time, the Chapel Hill police had not even released Hedgepeth's cause of death, although her parents told the media that their daughter's death certificate said she had been beaten. Police announced in January that the DNA from the scene had come back as belonging to a male. From the crime scene and other evidence, the Federal Bureau of Investigation had developed a profile of the man. They said it was likely that he had lived near Hedgepeth in the past, had expressed an interest in her, and his behavior may have changed since the crime, including showing an unusual interest in the case. Notwithstanding this release of information, the town successfully petitioned the court to keep the warrants under seal, saying the phase of the investigation was not complete. In May 2013, the court extended the seal another 60 days. So my question is, why were they so concerned about sealing the case? In September 2013, a year after the killing, Chapel Hill police formally requested the assistance of the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, which had provided some help earlier in the investigation with the case. We're working the case hard, and we've used all the possible resources, said Chief Chris Blue. However, he would not share any more information about the case. 2 months later, the Tar Heel noted that the Hedgepeth case remained open, along with the death case of David Shannon, a UNCCH freshman whose body had been found on the grounds of Carrboro cement plant the previous October. Okay, I don't know why they're even talking about this other guy. In Hedgepeth's case, there had been no new information about a possible suspect since January, yet the case records remain under court-ordered seal. So there's a person, Chelsea Delaney, that came out criticizing the seal of the case. The following month, Chelsea Delaney, A reporter who had originally covered the case at the Tar Heel wrote an article on the activist platform taking a skeptical look at the sealing of the case. She speculated that the seal's real purpose was to conceal early missteps by the Chapel Hill police, who might also not have been competent enough to handle the investigation by themselves. The town's court filing, she noted, revealed that after the first 2 months of the investigation, no new search warrants had been sought. We have to ask, how hot is it? Asked one of the lawyers representing the media. Delaney talked to the residents of the apartments at Hawthorne at the View who lived near Hedgepeth and Rosario. They told her that during the preceding summer, they strongly suspected the domestic violence later reported between Rosario and Jones. They thought the police presence on the day the body was found was related to that until they learned otherwise. So even the neighbors thought that this was the result of those domestic violence incidents. Two of the neighbors told Delaney that while the police sealed off the 4-unit block where Hedgepeth and Rosario lived with the crime scene tape, they only searched the woman's apartment and not any of the others in it. Nor did they search the woods behind the apartments, and they only returned later to search one other apartment in the complex. They did not seem to canvass the area either, never knocking on doors and asking residents what they might have seen. The police also left Hedgepeth's car unsecured while they searched the apartments. So here are some of Faith's transits taking place on the day she was murdered. Now, keep in mind that the transits of these outer planets were already in effect at the time of her death. So some of what these transits could manifest as could have occurred prior to her death. And with transiting Pluto opposition Mars, she might have had a sneaky suspicion that things weren't right. So transiting Pluto opposing her Mars, being the subject of an investigation, being under surveillance, and she was shown on the surveillance camera at the nightclub, being stalked. So this could have been prior to what was going on. Subterfuge, being forced out or excluded, acting under duress, a threat, behaving in ways that is unbecoming of yourself, a near-death experience. In this case, it was actual death, being under a lot of pressure, rejection, being overpowered, being outnumbered, brain damage, trauma to the head or face, significant hair loss, being in a precarious position, danger is afoot, being on the receiving end of hate, jealousy, or envy, someone exacts revenge upon you, people are ganging up on you, an emergency situation, being in crisis, being forced to take action, or even being forced to defend yourself. And they did say that they found blood underneath her fingernails, which shows that she did put up a struggle, block progress, and inability to move forward, feeling as if the walls are closing in. Transiting Pluto was forming a semi-square with her Pluto, undergoing an assessment or evaluation, which we know was taking place with the autopsy, purging that which is no longer of value or use to you, succumbing to outside pressure. Maybe she was pressured to go out with her friend. Maybe she really didn't want to. Extricating yourself from an undesirable situation, a time where much that occurs is beyond your control. Subversion, being on the receiving end of someone's revenge, seeing your attempts as futile, being beset with grief or remorse, uncovering unsavory information about someone. Transiting Pluto in Capricorn, squaring Moon in Libra, battery, murder, a home intruder, undergoing a transformation in terms of your personality, being canceled, being shut in or out, a violation of privacy, an emotional breakdown, feeling that you've been cursed or hexed, a death within the family. So we know this transit was affecting her family deeply because of her death. Mother is in crisis. So of course her mother was in crisis when she learned of the death of Faith. A period of insecurity, emotional turmoil, being tormented, being abused, being the victim of a crime, outside interference, external factors jerk you out of your comfort zone, being on the receiving end of hate or derision, being manipulated, betrayal. Now here's Eric on the right. Just looking at his face, I mean, that is a face of a murderer, if you ask me, and somebody that like is smirking about it, like that could give two fucks about it. Transiting Neptune, semi-square Neptune, fatigue, problems with sleeping. They did say, well, according to Karina Rosario, she claims she left Faith sleeping. So this could deal with where she was caught sleeping. Being overly intoxicated, a secret is out, being in hot water, feeling lost, an uncanny experience, dizziness, fainting, losing consciousness. A surreal or bizarre experience, losing hope, crying, sobbing, a series of unfortunate events, disappointment, disillusionment, a paranormal experience, which is likely to occur when you are close to the end of your life. Passivity comes with a high price. A misunderstanding creates embarrassment or humiliation. Transiting Uranus and Aries square Mars in Cancer. That's Faith with Karina. So this could play out as a serious head injury, which definitely occurred, a violent attack, a crazy or unexplainable situation, instability, being bullied, not standing up for yourself, disloyalty, an upsetting situation, being ostracized, dealing with an oddball or weird person, a nonsensical person, an anomaly. Unexpected circumstances leave you feeling confused or feeling at a loss, being stunned by what is occurring, being stupefied, a wake-up call. This is like a rude awakening. The ugly truth is revealed, being ganged up on, a problem with a friend, breaking ties with someone, backing down in the face of a tyrannical person, ending a friendship or association, unwanted changes, a major disagreement, refusing to give in, being outnumbered, and enforced separation. Transiting Jupiter was also forming a quincunx with her Neptune. I believe this was one of her friends after she learned of Faith's death. Being in need of spiritual guidance, passivity, isolation, escapism, being highly impressionable, being in a vulnerable position, being duped, desiring to be left alone, clandestine activity, disillusionment, losing something, lacking understanding, being under the wrong impression, being at the mercy of one who makes a decision or determination, a need to read between the lines, suspecting theft or deception, false pretenses, being under the illusion, a major error, blunder, or mix-up. Makes me think of the police investigation and how that was botched with Neptune being in Capricorn. Being out of touch with reality, a need to yield to forces beyond your control, petitioning to a higher power, fervent prayer. So transiting Mars in Scorpio was forming a semi-square with her north node and a sesqui-square with her south node. This represents the voicemail message. Again, there was a voicemail message left on one of Faith's friends' phones, and basically there was theory saying that she probably butt dialed her friend by accident while she was at the club. But then there's some people that believe that the voicemail is depicting her being murdered right at that time. So it also shows that the texts were probably sent by someone other than Faith. So Faith, well, there was a couple of texts found from Faith's phone prior to her death, where she texts this dude for her friend Karina. The neighbor hearing the loud thumps with that Gemini South node, bleeding out due to being bludgeoned. That's the North node in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is blood. They said that there was blood all over. Transiting Venus in Leo square Venus in Scorpio. Here's Karina right here looking all dark and sinister. Conflict or struggle with a woman. Being amongst people you do not know. This could be when she was at the club. Attempting to navigate a crowd of people. A run-in with an ex-partner or old enemy. Someone is going overboard, making mountains out of molehills. Seeing the consequences of poor decision-making. Being overwhelmed by people, dealing with a jealous or envious woman, things get out of hand. All right, so I want to talk about some of what I see in Eric's chart, and then I'm going to talk about the synastry between Eric and Faith, because I strongly believe that Eric is the murderer, and I believe that his girlfriend Karina helped him because she was basically totally influenced by him. Hence, the Sun Moon conjunction in Libra in Faith's chart. So Chiron and South Node in Cancer trying Pluto and Scorpio. When I saw that, I was like, that's like Eric getting away with murder due to his family connection. So that Chiron in particular conjoined to the Cancer South Node, that could deal with where he comes from a special family or where the family has special connections. Also, this shows that his DNA was excluded since it was already all over the apartment since he used to live there. So they're saying that Eric's DNA, the police are saying Eric's DNA did not match the DNA found at the scene, but we know his DNA had to be all over the apartment because he used to live there. So this actually helped him out. Like, this trying is basically allowing him to get away with murder. It resulted in him being excluded from being a prime suspect. Sun in Pisces trying Chiron and South Node in Cancer. Someone in his family is keeping his secret. His woman kept his secret. Maybe he has family who are Masons due to the Pisces influence. So Pisces rules secret societies. And then even Cancer comes into play when it comes to the Masons, just by the term masonry as well, in masonry alone. So, because it deals with builders. So I wouldn't be surprised if he had Masonic ties, and that explains how he was able to get away with this murder. So his sun is at the 29th degree of Pisces, squaring Mars at the 22nd degree of Gemini. And you know what I say about both of these degrees. So that 22nd degree is sudden death, control or be controlled, kill or be killed. And that 29th degree can produce head injuries. So this square is the epitome of hitting someone over the head with a bottle of liquor. Pisces would be the liquor. And like I said before, that 29th degree can produce head injuries. It can produce high pressure situations. And I wouldn't be surprised with this square because it can make somebody prone to be violent and just be a person that causes conflict a lot. Person that can be totally like all wrapped up into himself where he doesn't care about anybody else. So I wouldn't be surprised if he envisioned hitting someone over the head or maybe even hitting Faith over the head with a bottle of liquor before he even did it. So this 29th degree also pertains to the love triangle that I was talking about previously. And I believe what went down was Eric had a strong attraction to Faith, but he was with Karina. And I don't think Faith liked Eric at all, and she had no attraction to him. But so that's why I'm saying love triangle. In his mind, it was like a love triangle. It was him, Faith, and Karina. Him trying to get with Faith. Him probably, making passes at Faith when he was, there. So love triangle, where he suffers loss and humiliation, that's Pisces, shows that he is capable of killing someone or at least inflicting violence upon them. That's that Sun square Mars. Moon in Taurus, opposition Pluto in Scorpio. This is another smoking gun aspect. So succumbing to negative could even be demonic influences. The restraining order, being kicked out. Also him trying to break back into the house. Being obsessed with a woman. Being rejected by a woman. Exacting revenge upon a woman. Setting out to murder or destroy a woman. Mars in Gemini, quincunx Pluto in Scorpio, represents the restraining order, operating undercover, having an explosive temper. Mars in Gemini, quincunx North Node in Scorpio, this can produce a poor work ethic. He probably couldn't keep a job. Ability to manipulate the police. Gets out of having to face his responsibilities. And that's where he can talk his way out of it. So he has a T-square involving his Venus in Taurus squaring Jupiter in Leo, his Venus squaring Saturn in Aquarius, and Jupiter opposing Saturn in Aquarius. So this is Eric getting caught up in a situation involving his girlfriend and her friend. He probably wanted to get with Faith while he was with Karina. Faith's rejection is a major blow to his ego. That's that Venus square Jupiter in particular. Some of his disagreements with Karina could have been over his advances towards Faith, because remember, they were all living together at one point. Access to Faith is blocked once Karina files for the restraining order. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, while Faith was at the apartment, he would be leering at her and like just making gestures towards her. And Faith probably went to Karina a few times and was like, look, you better get your man. Mercury and Aries square Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn. This can cause him to be mentally unstable, dishonesty, deception involving friend slash associate. What he did is on his conscience, hence the social media posts. Mercury and Aries square Chiron in Cancer, tries to break into Karina and Faith's apartment on a few occasions, beefing with women, domestic violence, threatening violence against a woman. So again, let's go over Eric's incriminating statements again. It says in the Observer report, Rosario's ex-boyfriend, Eric Decoy Jones IV, is described as one of the initial persons of interest in Hedgepeth's death. The fact that he's a 4, that's dealing with that Chiron conjoined to that Cancer South Node. And you know, a lot of times when you have namesakes that are passed down, it's because there's some type of prestige in the family. So again, when I tell you this boy had family connections that enable him to get away with this murder, I believe I'm onto something. He reportedly threatened to kill Hedgepeth if Rosario didn't get back together with him, even though there was a protective order against him filed in July 2012. The day before Faith Hedgepeth died, Eric Decoy Jones asked a buddy via text to forgive him for what I am about to do. In the days after her death, Jones took to Facebook with another suspicious message. Dear Lord, forgive me for all my sins and the sins I may commit today. Protect me from the girls who don't deserve me and the ones who wish me dead. That's that moon opposition Pluto in his chart all day. Now, I believe if he would have killed Faith, he would have eventually killed some other woman, because he definitely had some serious issues with women. So let's get into some of what is in Faith and Eric's synastry, because it basically shines even more of a light on this situation, especially in terms of my theory with Eric and Karina both being the culprits, both being the murderers. Eric's Mars conjoined the Faith South Node in Gemini. So this is pointing to karmic ties that the two of them share. So they could have had a past life together. You never know. He could have been her boyfriend in a past life. Eric's threats of violence towards Faith. This is a big indicator of Eric being the main culprit due to the abuse and violence that is implied. Could be indicative of Eric's sexual attraction and resulting frustration due to not being able to have Faith. So with this conjunction, it just shows that he was on Faith hard. He was lusting after her. And again, when I say he was more than likely leering at her and making certain gestures towards her while they were all living in the same apartment, I believe that was some of the reason why Eric and Karina would start beefing. Eric's Sun square in Faith's nodes shows that Eric triggered the karmic debt of the South Node and hard lessons of Faith's North Node. So again, her basically dealing with the common folk, like I said, with that Gemini South Node, and her not listening to her intuition with that Sagittarius North Node, basically got her hemmed up, resulted in her being a victim. And I'm not victim blaming or shaming. I'm just saying, you know, this is basically how it was taking place. Eric's Mars squaring Faith's Jupiter in Virgo. Faith's meddling causes Eric to become angry, because remember that Jupiter in Virgo, that's her trying to help, but it can also make her come across as meddlesome, and that's how Eric was viewing her. Could also be representative of sexual tension that existed between the two of them. Now with Faith's Jupiter in Virgo, you know, she's more than likely the type where she's like, I'm not going to mess around with my friend's man, or like where she's just not being receptive to his sexual advances because she knows it wouldn't be right and all that stuff. And it could also show where, yeah, she was telling on him. Eric's Sun in Pisces opposing Faith's Jupiter in Virgo. Faith's meddling results in Eric being isolated from Karina. And now Eric wants her to pay. But again, I believe that him being isolated from Karina, it really hurt him twofold. He couldn't be with Karina, but he also couldn't leer at Faith anymore. Eric's Mercury and Aries opposing Faith's Mercury and Libra. That's like them being at war with each other. Eric becoming angry and threatening violence against Faith for driving Karina to the courthouse, or you could say for Faith's intervening in Karina's situation. Eric's moon opposing Faith's Pluto. This echoes the aspect in his natal chart. So this is, again, a smoking gun aspect in the synastry. So this is showing him being rejected by Faith, exacting revenge upon Faith, a murder plot, wanting to kill or destroy Faith, threatening, stalking Faith. So Eric's Venus in Taurus was opposing Faith's Venus in Scorpio, both of them at the first degree. So it was a very tight opposition. So this is representing Faith rejecting Eric's attempts to get with her, in my opinion. And he must have made it very obvious that he was into her, like licking his lips or leering at her, like I said. Remember, his Mars was conjoined to her Gemini South Node. And I wouldn't be surprised if she saw something in him that made her suspicious. Also, Eric's Jupiter and Leo squaring Faith's Venus and Scorpio. This is Faith's rejection being a major blow to his ego. And with Jupiter and Leo, he has an overblown ego, period. And here's Eric again. He has a face where he looks like, yeah, I did it, but I'm going to get away with it. What? Like he has that defiant, snarky, evil look to him. So there's one transit in particular that to me shows that he was the culprit, and it's transiting Pluto sesqui square his moon. So this can be akin to bludgeoning a woman, murdering a woman, and it can be like an extreme act of violence because of the sesqui square. A serious, here is some of what's taken from my book. So a serious power struggle involving a woman, property damage, being in crisis mode, menstrual problems. The reason why I included this in here is because it was reported in some of the stories or accounts that a tampon was reportedly placed next to Faith's body. So it's interesting that I had written about menstrual problems with this transit, and this is one of the transits that Eric was going through. Emotional turmoil, being under pressure, and emotional breakdown, an emotional outburst, being excluded, being subject to negative, could be demonic influences, strife within the family or household, a home inspection uncovers issues, an oppressive situation going to extremes, a home intruder, which he was, a burglary or a break-in, an invasion of privacy, a gut-wrenching experience, a period of insecurity, being forced to deal with the issue from the past, attempting to put the past behind you, being surrounded by unsavory characters, being overpowered, an external threat, being vengeful, being pestered or harassed, that could have been by the police, undergoing an extensive background check, again, when he was being questioned by the police. Transiting North Node at the 29th degree of Scorpio, trying Eric's Sun at the 29th degree of Pisces. This is a transit that is basically showing that he basically got away with murder. High pressure situations is what that 29th degree produces, head injuries, getting away with murder, the perfect crime. His DNA would already be at the scene of the crime since it took place on Karina's bed. His DNA would be all over the apartment for that matter. Transiting Neptune at the first degree of Pisces, sextile Eric's Venus at the first degree of Taurus, using the liquor bottle. And I'm thinking that he probably hit her a few times and then gave the bottle to Karina for her to finish the job, having an alibi, being cleared as a prime suspect, transiting Mercury and Virgo, trying Uranus and Capricorn, enlisting the help of a friend. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a third person involved, giving statements to the police that satisfied their investigation. Now that brings me to the last part of this reading. I decided to do a 4-card tarot reading on this situation, basically asking who killed Faith. And the first situation, the first card is the situation. Second card, and that's just representing Faith and the case being sealed. The challenge is the Two of Swords. So that can show that, you know, people are still not satisfied with the determination, with, you know, them basically saying, oh, it was this dude that killed her, Miguel Enrique. And then the advice is the Eight of Swords. That Eight of Swords says it all, because that is somebody that's being restrained. And we know that Karina placed a restraining order on Eric at Faith's behest. So I feel like this is telling us all we need to know. And with the Judgment card, that can be where he was basically brought out of it. He was basically excluded from the investigation. He was pulled out of the situation. He was pulled out of the ordeal. And it could be, again, because he has those family ties, those family connections. Again, remember, he's a 4. He's Eric Takoy Jones the 4th, which tells you something about his family. I'm just saying. But this Eight of Swords says it all, if you ask me. That's being restrained. So, yeah. So let me know what you think in the comments section. And thank you once again, Marcus, for sponsoring this reading. It was really hard to get through because it just seemed like there was so many things that went wrong with the investigation, and it really had me scratching my head. But then, like, to me, when I first learned about the story, to me, the obvious people were Eric and Karina. But then they were trying to say, oh, they did the DNA and all that. But I'm not believing all that. I believe Eric and Karina murdered Faith. Hopefully one day justice will be served. But I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't, because there's a lot of crimes that go unsolved. So please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned for more sponsored videos and more videos just in general. And I thank everyone for your continued support. Peace.